Thank you everyone for your patience while we had some teething problems there, Instagram. I've heard that Instagram rooms where there are 4 participants, that it can be a bit chaotic. So thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here today. Pluto, Dark Necessities is our theme. And I'm just going to go around the round table and ask everyone to introduce yourself maybe by your big 3. And if you could share what element and modality you bring to the table, and maybe a little bit about how astrology found you. So Jasmina, I'm going to start with you. So you're on my right as I'm looking at the screen.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for organizing this. I think it's so much fun. And Tom, I know already, and I love his astrology. Andre, I'm going to meet him one-on-one in a couple of weeks in other lives. So I'm so excited about that. I love everything that you guys do. I'm a modern astrologer, so I have like a modern discipline of more psychological, humanistic side. That's my practice. But I double into everything. You know, I do annual perfections for solar returns and stuff like that. I love to have, you know, as my big 3 will tell you why, because I'm a Gemini sun, Gemini moon, and Virgo rising. So I'm a Mercury girl for sure, and always eager to learn and to expand our knowledge, and of course share the information. That's very important for me, to interact with others and just brainstorm and, you know, connect. And, you know, if I find something out, oh, I have to share it with somebody else. So that's,
you're so mutable, Jasmina.
yes. As I was going to say, so my forte is mutable air, having all this idea, sharing them, brainstorming, networking, communicating. This is what I bring to the table today. And just because we're talking about Pluto, I'm going to mention Pluto. I have Pluto in the 1st house, so in quadrant system. So that also gives me a kind of a Plutonian curiosity, and you know, I always liked crime stories and research deep in psychology. So that's
amazing. And how did astrology find you, Jasmina?
So she found me when I was not even a teenager, like I was 9 or 10. My dad was telling me, you know, oh, you're a Gemini. And I was like, what does that mean? So back in the day when I was a teenager, we didn't have phones or cell phones or internet. So I had to find some little booklets in the local store. And I learned all about the sun signs from my family members. So I knew everything about Capricorn, Pisces, Cancerian, and Gemini. That was my first 4 that I knew everything about them. And then later there was like a magazine I found that was going, it was going out each month. And then I was kind of doing it by hand,
Yes.
finding it sanded by hand and calculating. And that's how it began. And then
looking at your family is a wonderful way to learn astrology organically, you know, by a human observation.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I love that story. I'm going to jump to Tom next. Tom, if you could tell us your big 3, maybe your dominant element and modality, and how astrology found you as well.
Yeah, so yeah, just to parrot what Jasmina was saying, it's lovely to speak with you 3. I've spoken with Jasmina before, but obviously I've been following all 3 of you for a while, so it's lovely to be sharing the screen with you. So I'm Gemini sun, Gemini rising, and Aquarius moon. So I'm very airy. But in general, in terms of the elements in my chart, there's quite a mix. There is a lot more kind of air and fire, but I do have some earth and water in there as well. And I think in general, a more overall, there's a more fixed element of modality there. So that's interesting as well. So even though I'm very airy, I can be grounded at times.
Good.
Not all the time. And yeah, in terms of how astrology found me, so I work as a psychologist. So I've always been interested in the mind and humans and people and how we work. So it wasn't too much of a leap when I then became interested in tarot, started hearing a lot about astrology through that, because there's a lot of links there. And I mean, it's funny now looking back, because I'd always known I was a Gemini, because everybody knows their sun sign, don't they? You know, everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm a Gemini. But I think it always really resonated with me. And I now know, because I'm a Gemini rising, it felt like, oh yeah, well, that's just me all over. That's just explains who I am. So I think I'd always been fascinated with it. And it was only in the last few years that I started to go down the astrology rabbit hole. And this year I took the leap to do a course, and I'm doing Adam Ellenbass's Nightlight Astrology course, the Hellenistic one, which is I know is the same one that Andre has done. And so I'm actually taking more of a traditional astrology approach at the moment, which has been really interesting.
Oh, I love that. And can I ask, are you an eighth houser that you got interested in tarot?
No, so I think I've got Uranus and Neptune in the eighth house.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it.
But I suppose so the ruler of the eighth house is in my 10th. So it's interesting that I'm interested in therapy and also astrology and things like that.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. And I'm going to pop over to Andre last, but certainly not least. Andre, if you could drop your big three and share your dominant element modality and how astrology found you.
Yes, absolutely. So like everyone else, I just want to say thank you so much for gathering us and having this event. It's very exciting. I am a Virgo sun, Libra moon, and Pisces rising, and my dominant modality my dominant element is water, and my modality is mutability, so mutable water. And how astrology found me. So I guess that really harkens back to when I was about getting out of college. I was raised Catholic in the church, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but after that, my first house Saturn kind of started acting up as I grew older, and it was like, why is this like this? I don't really know if this is for me. So I started looking around, and I happened upon Manly Palmer Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages.
Wow.
And I read that book cover to cover, and astrology really popped out in there for me. So I just kind of took a deep dive. I started with modern, and that was about 2018, I believe. And last year, I took Adam Mullenboss's course on traditional astrology, and here we are.
Wow, I love that. I love that. And what's really amazing about this group is that we've got an amazing balance of energy, because Jasmina, you're so mutable, and Tom, you've got a lot of fixed. Andre is mutable. I'm very cardinal, and I'm fire dominant, and I lack a lot of, what you guys bring to the table, essentially. I lack air in my chart and earth. I have some earth, very little air. So it's just amazing to connect and share our energy. So Pluto, dark necessities.
I have to interrupt you before you have to say your big threes and how astrology found you. Because...
Yeah. So I have one about my big three all the time on my page. So I take it for granted that people know. But I'm a Sagittarius rising, an Aries moon, and a Cancer sun. And sun in the 7th house, Placidus, in the 8th house, whole sign. I resonate strongly with both. They're my big three. How astrology found me. I've been really obsessed and interested in astrology since I was very young. It started with an obsession with Greek mythology, and it quickly snowballed after that. And to be honest, the fact that I got involved in mythology so young, it gave me a great grounding in astrology. So rather than learning astrology and having to go back, I already knew the myths. So that was like a really great foundation, and it has stood to me throughout my journey, so to speak, in astrology. So yes, Pluto, dark necessities. The reason I chose dark necessities is because Pluto, I feel, there's a necessity there for Pluto to always uncover darkness. And the big themes with Pluto are, of course, power. And I was thinking today, in order to go forward with Pluto, we have to go back. And I'm going to be very bold and go back to Pluto in Sagittarius. And I was just thinking about it today. The 20 years Pluto was in Sagittarius, international travel expanded. People were suddenly flying all over the world. It was so easy to travel. And then, of course, we had 9/11 during Pluto in Sagittarius. So Pluto exposed and uncovered some darkness in, the expansiveness of Sagittarius and all that freedom that Sagittarius brings when it revolutionized travel. So the dark side was, the terrorist attacks, and then, how travel changed forever during that period. And then travel was suddenly more controlled. And now, we are coming to the end of Pluto in Capricorn. And I was trying to think, today, what is the most significant event that happened during Pluto and Capricorn was probably COVID. And again, we saw the power structures having to deal with, you know, COVID, and these big themes around government imposed lockdowns. So, you know, now that we're at the end of Pluto in Capricorn, and what do you feel are, you know, Pluto's, I mean, big themes when it was in Capricorn? Also, like the parting gifts, so to speak, if we can call them gifts. Because Pluto is obviously changing something that is Capricorn rules. And I always associate Capricorn with government structures, and Pluto is power. So, Jasmina, I'll start with you. Pluto and Capricorn, what do you feel were the big themes on a societal level that we experienced this 20 years?
I just want to go back to the Sagittarius era and just add something. It was also the era when internet bloomed. So it was the knowledge of getting access to, you know, wisdom. I mean, it was greater, you know, getting to know other cultures and just travel through internet as well, and getting that knowledge and accessibility to knowledge in Pluto Sagittarius. I think it was a huge thing. Just to
good point.
As a positive. I have my stellium in the 9th house, so I'm always trying to be looking on the bright side of things. It's interesting. So for Pluto, Pluto and Capricorn started with the crashing of housing market back in 2008. So it was a huge impact, you know, on the economy, in you know, and the corporations, the big corporations, also the government. The whole housing market was, you know, the USA was, you know, was totally collapsed with that. You know, many people lost homes and jobs. It was crazy. And it's interesting that now we also have like inflation, and we have all this house market is crazy as well. I mean, to be honest, the prices are too high. It's not real. You know, people can't even afford. It's really, you know, the extreme.
Capitalism.
So it kind of
Capitalism exploded. Yes. Can we say that probably during Pluto and Capricorn? And we've seen the dark side of it.
Yeah. So Pluto, these big corporations also think about. I don't want to get us cut, but all these big corporations that got money, you know, from all of us, right?
Yes.
From shipping companies, let's say, from other, you know, communication companies and travel and all this, you know, the corporations got power, you know, over people, that I feel that. So I think now with the end, it's going to crash. It's going to be a reset of all of that, right? Because just like the end of Pluto and Sagittarius, there was like a reset of terrorism. It was a reset. There was like a lot of, you know, if you look at Bin Laden and something, you know, I don't know what happened. It was a bunch of those people who kind of were gone from the picture. So I think also now that a bunch of corporations and governments are going to end. It's still not the end, because the next year we have Pluto and Capricorn just going back to the 29 degrees from September to November. So that's going to be the last one. So I think this whole year we're still going to have, and see in 1 year time the finalization of that. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Yes. Andre, would you like to hop on that? What are your thoughts on Pluto and Capricorn?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely agree with Jasmina. We definitely saw the dark side of capitalism, and I just kind of wanted to riff off of that. When I think of Capricorn, I think of goal orientation and just striving towards that goal and walking that long and winding road. Sorry for the background noise, y'all. I guess people are not sleeping in this morning.
We don't hear anything. Don't worry.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, cool. Okay. I really feel like during this time, we kind of came face to face with the dark side of that striving without acknowledging the humanity and nourishment and comfort needs of Cancer. You know, because Capricorn is like, let's go. You know, we're gonna pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're just gonna get the thing done, and you know, it's about the result. It's about the end game. It's about the efficiency. Very earth, very dry, kind of detached. Not really caring about, you know, the watery kind of like, oh, how does that make us feel? Like, no, we're just gonna get it done. And we are now kind of seeing the consequences of that sort of mentality and lifestyle. Not caring about the emotional component of all that work that we had to put in. And now look where we are, like Jasmine was talking about, you know. I mean, I live in the US. It's not pretty right now economically. It's a seller's market right now in the housing market. It has been for a couple of years. It really made us come face to face with the facts like, wow, we do so much work, and now money, Capricorn, I do associate with money. All earth signs I associate with money.
Yes.
And resources. And now our resources are, they seem farther out of reach, despite no matter how much work we do, how much effort we put in, how much we strive, what goals we put down. We can make these plans, but I feel like Pluto kind of made us see that, yes, there is room for progress, but also if you continue that, endlessly, it is going to burn you out. You're going to be burnt out. You're going to, you're going to become too detached, too perhaps materialistic, only caring about money, only caring about the survival needs, the material survival needs, as opposed to the emotional survival needs, because Capricorn is opposite Cancer. So yeah, I think we came face to face with the dark side of the grind, to put that.
It was a
Yeah.
high price to pay. High price.
Hustle culture.
Yes.
The grind culture. We saw that escalate during Pluto and Capricorn, and even in culture and music and the arts, Cardi B sang about money. There's it's all about money. And we can see America, of course, is unique in that it is going through its Pluto return. So many Plutonic themes coming up. Tom, how did you experience Pluto and Capricorn? What insights did you gain from this, this 20-year transit through the sign of Capricorn?
Well, I think the dark side of the grind is a great tagline for for Pluto and Capricorn. Yeah, I think the thing about Pluto, I was thinking about this in advance of meeting with you, and I think Pluto for me represents kind of the collective unconscious, which is an idea from Carl Jung about what goes unseen for all of us as in humanity as a collective. And I think that as Pluto moves through a sign, certain aspects of what the sign that's in, it will kind of bubble up to the surface. So like you said with Sagittarius, there was a lot of fear, and because I think fear is a real key word with Pluto as well, around religious extremism, around travel, themes like that. And if you go back and look at all of the other signs, you can see similar kind of the darker side of that sign kind of coming up. And so yeah, I totally agree with what Jasmina and Andre said about Capricorn. I guess one thing to add, other than just about capitalism, is something I've really noticed is the fear of power and the patriarchy as well. I think about how much over the last 20 years we have spoken about the patriarchy, and we had the Me Too movement, and we had all of these things coming up. And this is such a Pluto thing as well, stories that were untold about women's experiences of sexual abuse and harassment kind of coming to the surface. And that can be a benefit, I think, of Pluto transiting through a sign, is it brings to light things that were unseen before and allows us to kind of look at it in a new way and think, well, is this serving us anymore as we move forward, and as Pluto moves into a new sign? Do we want to take that with us? Do we want to keep going with that? So I think other than fear around money, fear around abuses of power, then yeah, I think another one is the, I guess, patriarchy kind of comes into that with power as well.
Yeah. And even when the Barbie movie came out, the word patriarchy was becoming suddenly very more topical. We can see here towards the end of Pluto and Capricorn, young girls going to see Barbie, suddenly learning about the patriarchy, and children learning about it essentially. The Me Too movement, I'm so glad you touched on that, because that was a huge part of the Pluto in Capricorn, I guess, transit. That toxic masculinity, and as well the father wound, I think that came up a lot for people throughout this. And you can see this in men, and I even see it in the gym culture we have right now. Instagram and is particularly, a great example of it. people, you know, posting, you know, extremely masculine photos, let's say, this kind of this overt masculinity, we'll say, okay, for want of a better word. And Pluto is showing us the dark side of that, because you can see a lot of people coming forward now towards the end of Pluto and Capricorn, men and women alike, saying, you know what, I've actually been addicted to exercising. I've been taking these protein shakes. I've had disordered eating. So we can see the dark side of the grind, I guess, for sure. So like now that Pluto is finishing its transit in Capricorn, some astrologers feel that, you know, it's definitely exposing men in power, especially, you know, men very high up in power. And towards the end of Pluto and Capricorn, many predict that, you know, when Pluto leaves Capricorn, it will take these men down, you know, these men that have been very elevated in society, whether in business or in government. Some of those men, especially those who have not perhaps been acting in their integrity, will be taken down, will be exposed. And some of them might be persecuted wrongly even before, you know, someone else is taken down. But that would be interesting to see how that plays out, especially next year in America. It's going to be such a melting pot. I think we need a whole new live for that, because it's going to be very interesting astrology. So Pluto's ingress into Aquarius, I mean, we can think about all the things that Aquarius rules on a societal level. Jasmina, what are you excited for, first of all? We can do the negatives maybe afterwards. But what are you excited for?
I absolutely love that Aquarius is all about astrology. And not only that, it's about community. So I'm thinking we could have like a raise of being more in tune with our community that we live in and environment. So it's also about environment. It's about getting it, because we were so detached in the last, this Capricorn is also about me, and, you know, I want to be on top. I think it's going to be time that we need to think about others and where we live and our environment around ourselves, and connecting with, you know, with our tribe. So finding our tribe, I think this is going to be a huge thing. And realizing maybe what Tom mentioned, like on a higher consciousness level, that we cannot be separated from the world we live in and from the people we live around. So we're going to have to focus on that. And also because there's other factors, Aquarius is about future. Aquarius is about, but it's also about, it can be objective. So that's what I like, right? Tom will confirm, because he has a moon in Aquarius, but he can be, you know, it can be objective and see the big picture, not in a Sagittarian way, but in a community environmental way. So I think that's going to be a huge change, and we're gonna maybe change the way we process food, the way we, you know, just do everything in a different way. Like maybe more communes, that we grow, you know, this food that we, you know, like organic food, and then we share this, like there's many cities already have like those city gardens, so you can go and pick up I don't know if you saw that. I went in Montreal here in Canada, and they have like, and you can pick up zucchini or some kind of peppers, and they have like a city garden, which is beautiful. Like people just, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, I feel that's going to be like a huge thing, positive.
Yeah, Aquarius, I guess, is the sign. It's not the sign of the individual, it's the sign of the group. So with Pluto moving into Aquarius, the big question in my mind is, will we be more self-oriented at the start with the North Node in Aries, or are we going to like shift towards the group, or will we first be focusing more on the self? It'll be interesting to see, because usually the transit doesn't take full effect, I often find, till the end, you know, like things aren't rectified or improved. So sometimes it's like the bad things come up first. It will be interesting to see, though, will there be more of a shift instantly towards community, rather than away from, you know, Jasmina, do you think the shift will be instant to community-based focus?
No, because it progresses through these 20 years, not at the beginning, but I feel that this North Node in Aries, it's very necessary, because we need to find authenticity, who we are, to be the part of the group. You know, just like in every other relationship. If you don't know who you are, how can you contribute? So you have to find yourself. Who am I? What am I? You know, and then, you know, and then go from there. Then you can contribute. And everybody with their own skills but they need to be aware of them. So each one of us need to be aware of what can we contribute to this community. That's going to take some time, but that's why it's good that it starts with Northern Aries. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, well,
the
nodes of destiny will help. And with Pluto shifting into Aquarius, we're probably, most likely going to see the rise of the internet, and just the internet is going to transform rapidly in a way that none of us probably can prepare for or predict for. We've seen the advance of AI. We've also seen the dangers of, how quickly technology is advancing. Tom, what do you think, Pluto in Aquarius holds for the future of the internet and social media, perhaps?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that in terms of, we've already seen as it dipped into Aquarius, like you said, the rise of AI, which I think brings with it a lot of exciting opportunities. And I do think that is, if we're thinking about the positives, there is that side of things as well, where it could bring new opportunities. And like you say, I feel like the internet has kind of plateaued a bit. It felt like it goes through little periods, doesn't it, where it suddenly changes and shifts around. And I was just speaking to someone the other day about, like, I remember when you used to be able to personalize your social media page, and you'd be able to, like, add music and things like that. Long gone are those
You're thinking
days.
of Bebo, is it, Tom?
Yes, yeah. I hope that comes back. But yeah, and
we're really showing our vintage now. I just want to say,
I know.
Young viewers.
And I think it could be exciting, but we've seen, it's so interesting, the fallout from just Pluto being in Aquarius for a couple of months, of the fallout with the writers' strikes, and the actors' strike, because it's just kind of brought, again, Pluto's already doing its work of bringing to the surface of, like, the dark underbelly of, like, the fear around technology. And I think that it's interesting you mentioned the internet and social media, because I think there could potentially be a lot of fears around that. Because a great example, I don't know if you guys already knew this, but Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, she was born when Pluto was in Aquarius last time at the end of the 1700s, and she wrote Frankenstein, and her Pluto in Aquarius is conjunct her midheaven, so her career is known about this sort of Pluto in Aquarius themes. And if we just look at Frankenstein, it's a story about what happens when science goes too far, and when we take things to when we're kind of like, not thinking about whether we should do something, we're only thinking about whether we could do it. And I really think that that's something that we're going to see coming up. We've seen it with AI. We'll probably see it with robots and drones, where we're pushing things and we're like, oh, well, we could do this, so let's give it a try. And then actually we could be suffering at the consequences of that.
Yes, definitely. And as well, I feel with Pluto about to enter Aquarius, whoever is on the cusp of the next big social media platform, it's going to be huge, which, there is going to be more. We have some now that are very strong, but there will definitely be competition. Andre, what do you feel we can expect with Pluto in Aquarius? Are there things that you were looking forward to, or things you are concerned about maybe with this ingress?
My Libra stellium always tries to look at all sides of a situation. So there's things that I'm looking forward to and things that I'm not. Also, Aquarius lands in my 12th whole sign house, so, like, not super excited about that. Yeah. But it's good, because Pluto's MO is to put us into contact with unconscious material. It might look scary. It might look, uncomfortable before that, but I think a good keyword for Pluto is disinfect. Like, you have an open wound that you need to address. So the initial, like, putting of the rubbing alcohol in there is painful and stings a little bit, but it kind of helps you clear out the gunk. So having said that, I think whenever I think of Aquarius, I'm a big nerd, so I think of sci-fi. So just, like, really big jumps in technology, in the human mind, and our ability to accentuate our senses, because Aquarius is opposite Leo, so I don't think there's anything new under the sun, but we have made these really amazing technologies that accentuate our senses, like social media. Now we can talk to people that are across the world in different time zones like we're doing right now. So I think there's going to be big jumps in that. I think there's going to be very cool inventions. I really love what Tom said about the technology of thinking of whether or not we could do something as opposed to whether or not we should do something. Aquarius is an air sign, as we know, so it's very detached, it's very cold, it observes. It's the archetype to me of Aquarius is just like a scientist, an observer. He's observing data come through and, you know, writing it down and being like, okay, so I take the Saturnian ruled approach to Aquarius, so it's still very much to me about cause and effect. So we are measuring with Aquarius the cause and effect of our mental framework, how we perceive what we know to be real, and it asks us to step out. It's not just Saturn to me isn't just boundaries. It is boundaries, but there's also a threshold that's there that can be like, hey, there's this entrance here. Why don't we cross the threshold and see what's behind door number 1? You know. So I think boldly going out there beyond the bounds of what is known to us, scary. Pretty scary. You know, when Pluto dipped its toe into Aquarius last time, we got confirmation that aliens definitely exist, and they are definitely here. And well, they've definitely been coming and saying hello and observing us. And, you know, that's a whole new variable that we just did not we didn't know that we knew or not. So you know, that very detached observational sort of deal will go hand in hand with us. It'll go hand in hand with other life forms that might be on the outlying outcast sort of black sheep sort of mentality. I like what Jasmine said earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking because Uranus is going to go in Gemini, so maybe they're going to trine at some point, Pluto and Uranus. And I'm thinking, people think new way of transportation and stuff, yes, but maybe new way of communicating with somebody else from the space.
I like that.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Unexpected.
Yeah, and then
the dark side, I feel, of social media will probably be exposed more, and perhaps we will need a bit more safeguarding around social media, even though I'm not in favor of policing social media too much. But with Pluto moving into Aquarius full time, you know, sharing our live location, will this still be, you know, a safe, advisable thing to do? Sharing pictures perhaps of, you know, your children. Is this something, you know, with the advance of AI, is this something we should be doing? You know, sharing too much of our personal life, perhaps, you know, too much of our data. Our data is being mined. We know that already, but surely data is going to become like the most valuable commodity in the world now with Pluto in Aquarius. So I feel like we will be shown the dark side of it before we get it right. And with Pluto involved, we can expect some government interference, certainly by the end. And already I heard today that in America, it was a bipartisan agreement. They all voted that social media should be banned for, you know, children of a certain age or teenagers, because I guess we are already seeing some of the really dark elements of social media and how it can be used in a darker way. It can be abused, I guess. Jasmina, do you want to jump on that?
I just want to. There's a mind in my mind, because my mind works. What do you guys think? Are we going to be all chipped by the end of this in 20 years?
Ooh.
Over my dead body.
That's just a thought.
Who knows?
You know, my brain. Yeah. I just want. Sorry, Tom. I'm going to let you talk. Just one last thought, and then I'm done for this topic. Instead of fearing something, how can we find a way to integrate and work with it so we can? So there's, you know, so that all this AI and robots don't overpower us. I think that's the way we need to find a path to work with as a community, as a group, as humans together. So I think humanity is going to be on, no more me, it's us against them, let's say, but in a way that we need to find a way to work with it, because if we say ignore it or dismiss it or we're afraid of it, then there's always going to be opposition and it's going to be hard. We need to find, Andre is a Libra stellium, he can find the middle way, but that's what I'm saying, we need to find some kind of a way to work with all this technology, not to fight it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and absolutely right.
I think that it's something that we've not mentioned yet as well, which I think will be a big theme whilst Pluto is in Aquarius, which I think kind of links in with what you were just saying, Jasmina, is the theme of revolution. When we look back to when Pluto was in Aquarius last time, we had the American Revolution, we had the French Revolution, and it's so interesting going from Pluto in Capricorn into Aquarius, because again, you can see it last time. So in France, you had Versailles, you had this kind of obnoxious display of wealth, and there was such a disparity between poor people and the people in power. And then what comes next? You get a revolution, because people start saying what you were just saying, Jasmine. Well, what about us? We've got to band together. We've got to look out for each other and find a way to fight against that. And I'm curious as to whether that will. I'm sure we will see actual revolutions, but I'm sure there are other ways. I was thinking at that time as well, there was also the scientific revolution. So a new way of thought, a new way of thinking and approaching things. And I wonder if we'll see that as well, some kind of paradigm shift in terms of how we all think collectively as well. Because I guess, like you say, Aquarius being very detached, it's very thoughtful, thinky, it's scientific. Maybe we will be able to sort of access new areas of thinking as well, or a new approach maybe.
Definitely revolution in power and how power is managed and held, and revolution organized on the internet among people, which will definitely prove problematic for censorship. If people are organizing protests and revolutions, and it all starts on the internet now, we can expect certain factions and groups and societies as well. With Pluto and Aquarius, certain groups will certainly be persecuted for some amount of time, and it's not to scare people, it's just that this is what happens. Pluto comes in to show us these ugly things so that we can rectify them, and they need to be brought to the light. So those things, I expect that we will see those on a societal level before we move more towards a community-based approach, because I guess we live in a society now where a lot of people, maybe don't know their neighbors as well. It's a quite, whereas, in the past, people were very, they relied upon each other. My vocabulary isn't great today, but you know what I mean. It's kind of, we're quite self-sufficient now, and finding a sense of community. And even as astrologers, we will feel called to pull together, I feel, during Pluto and Aquarius, because, who knows, we could be the group that could be a little bit persecuted at the beginning, because we're quite innovative, we're quite, even though we're doing something that's quite traditional and an ancient art form, let's say a cosmic science, but anything that is revolutionary or unorthodox could potentially be persecuted a little bit by people, that disagree with us. What are your thoughts on this, Andre? I'll start with you, because I want to go to you first this time.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. I think that we will see the dark side of empiricism. So like the empirical mindset of the scientific mind of like, only what I can perceive with my senses is real, nothing else is. And I think Aquarius really invites us to examine the boundaries of our minds interacting with the physical environment, and then, asking us to not take on such an empirical mindset. Y'all heard of the mantis shrimp before? It is an underwater dwelling shrimp. It's a beautiful creature. It literally has rods and cones in its eyes that allow it to comprehend and process colors that we literally cannot understand, that our mental apparatus cannot comprehend. So I think Aquarius asks us to go beyond the bounds of what we think is real. But I feel like before that, we'll have some, I feel like it might be, I don't want to say the word inquisition and have it be like super scary. I just think that perhaps more scientifically oriented people will scrutinize what is on the outskirts of the known, like astrology, like tarot, like divination, like those kinds of things. And we might come face to face with the darker, ugly side of empiricism, and we might come face to face with the darker, ugly side of divination and astrology as well. How can we put disinfectant in that wound that needs to be addressed, in that open cut that might need to be addressed? And again, I take the traditional approach with Saturn ruling Aquarius, so it's very, very skeptical. It's very skeptical. It's very
I have a twist. Andrew, sorry to interrupt you. I have a twist on this. So
go ahead.
I know that this might happen, but then with all this technology and advancement, and and you said aliens and a bunch of stuff can happen. People are going to need more therapy, more people helping them understand themselves and who we are in all this technology and all this world. So I feel that astrologers are going to have it's going to be a rise of astrology, just because people are going to looking for answers more and more.
Absolutely.
Because detachment from they will want to find out what is happening. So I think that on the good side, I think astrologers will help many people. So and
I think it's
will
possible that both will happen. We will see a huge rise in astrology, and we will also see a lot of people dismissing astrology because cycles repeat. We know that as astrologers anyway. And, we know how astrology was suppressed before. So us gathering here, it's in a way, it's like a form of protection. Let's all gather at this round table and discuss what's ahead. We're saying, going into the future now as astrologers, we will join together and we will see that actually we're very powerful when we're united, because the astrology world can be pretty divisive, in of itself, in that we argue among what's the best house system, what's the best type of astrology. We dismiss certain things like, degree theory is relatively new. We dismiss it if we're traditional. And it's the whole concept of, can we agree to disagree as astrologers and come together and share platforms, share ideas?
Yeah. Aquarius asks us to look at the bounds of the, I'm sorry, just really quick. Aquarius asks us to look at the bounds of the known, and look at what's unknown. So, what's unknown to people might be astrology. What's unknown that might be really helpful and integrative might be forms of divination that aren't so scientifically minded, that, and not that, science is a bad thing. It absolutely has facilitated so many necessary modern inventions, but looking past those senses that we can comprehend, because we don't have a way to measure astrological forces, but for some reason here we are. It works. Before the microscope was invented, we couldn't see atoms. It's just looking different ways.
It's such a good point, Andre, you make, and I think even Tom alluded to it, even with his background in psychology. That all of us, I'm sure all of us, my day job, I am a primary school teacher. I do a very grounded day job, while I'm also, practicing as, a karmic astrologer, is my second job and my passion. But there might be this myth out there, and that we need to, I guess, dispel, that, astrologers, that we're all maybe woo-woo, or, that we don't live in the real world, We're very much of the real world. We pay bills and like everyone else, and pay our taxes.
Astrology itself is very empirical. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that really quick. I think it's a very scientific study. It's very detailed. You analyze it. It's got all the charts, the graphs, the data. You can be objective about it.
Complicated thing ever.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure, Tom, you'll agree, as someone who's starting your journey.
Oh God, yeah. There's so much, and And it's funny when when I try and explain it to my colleagues, I think it's funny because the leap, I suppose, is the philosophy behind it. It's the belief that's involved in it. And I guess what I'm hopeful for, going off what you said, Andre, is that, if the scientific revolution began when Pluto was last in Aquarius, I think what I've really noticed, I guess, in working in psychology as well, is that sometimes in recent years, I think that science is kind of a catch-all term for a lot of what can be very biased, not empirical kind of ways of thought. And I think that there's a lot of things like, I overheard a conversation recently where someone was saying, yeah, well, you can't prove that the soul exists because there's no scientific evidence to suggest that it does exist. And I was like, what kind of...
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and you're like, what kind of like way of thinking is that? And also, there are so many things now that we know through science that, so many years ago, you'd be like, oh, well, there's no proof for that, so therefore it doesn't exist.
Psychology was one of them. Psychology was just 100 years ago a boo-boo. Psychology dreams. What are you talking? Look at it. It's
and I think that's why, for me, I've kind of made this shift, because I think I can recognize that. But for some people, it's hard to sort of think, well, if there's no evidence for it, then I don't care. And I guess my hope is that there'll be another revolution in the way that we think about things, where we can start to bring in some of, okay, well, there are other ways to look at things. Yes. I'd love it if there was a more holistic science that kind of allowed for space for the things that we can't perceive with our instruments, with our senses.
What if we discover new ways to measure that astrology actually works, and we find measurements for it in this Aquarius age? What if that happens? Wow, exciting!
Be amazing.
Highly possible. Guys, it's been so interesting to discuss Pluto with you all. I could honestly chat to you for hours. I was just thinking there, it might be a nice way to wrap up Pluto in your own birth chart. Sorry now to put people on the spot, but I'm just thinking of my own chart. My strongest aspect with Pluto is I have Mercury square Pluto natally. Not an easy placement, but it actually is ultimately one of my favorite placements, especially when it comes to reading birth charts. I go incredibly deep. But when I go into a subject, or when I'm learning something, I go deeper than maybe other people would be comfortable with me going. And when I get to know people, I like to get to know them on a very deep, intense level. But I'm learning to manage it, and it's a life's journey, learning to manage Mercury square Pluto. But I do think ultimately, even though it's an aspect that can make you prone to obsession, it's certainly an aspect that has served me well and has given me a lot of gifts. Jasmina, aspects with Pluto in your birth chart, is there one
I have exact Pluto square Venus. So welcome to my control freak world. I'm kidding. With Virgo rising as well, you have to have a whole picture. I do like things to be my way and having control. But learning with this Venus through my life and my experience and my connections is having the balance in the relationships, and giving, losing the control and giving, the equality of partnerships, and giving that control to others as well. What I find interesting, because I'm part of this Pluto generation in Libra, which we are all about transforming the way we relate with others and giving power to others, like what I'm trying to do with all these lives and introduction, and other astrologers and talking with them. That's how I deal with this Venus and Pluto. One of the things, right? So letting go.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that.
So that's
Andre. What about you? Are you pretty Plutonic?
Yeah, I actually have Pluto in an exact trine to my ascendant. Well, not exact. So Pluto's at 25 Scorpio for me, and my ascendant's at 24 Pisces.
Oh, that'll do. That'll do.
Yeah. So it's I've definitely come to love Pluto. A lot of people are really intimidated by it because they think Pluto is like, oh, it's something's gonna be destroyed, something's gonna die, and they take it really literally, unfortunately. What can the dissolution of something, death, be? What can it make room for so we can bring in something new? how can we integrate, and yes, it's going to be intense, but it's a transformative time. It's very transformative. And that ability to, yes, look at what makes us uncomfortable, look at what, especially with Aquarius, I mean, my Virgo sun, I really enjoy, having a plan, having things laid out. For the most part, my Pisces rising kind of lets me go with the flow a little more, I would say. But looking past the bounds of the known, it's very scary for a lot of people, myself included. But I hope that Pluto will, help us integrate that, that darkness. And when I say darkness, it's just the unknown. You have to shine a light on it first, and you have to clear away all the cobwebs, and the spiders will scurry away once you shine a light on them. But yeah, I think Pluto is so necessary, because just like we need life, creation, generation, we need death and decay. And I obviously don't wish harm upon anyone, but things have to be broken down to make room for something new.
And with that aspect you have, Andre, I imagine you go through significant deaths and rebirths, in your life, pretty significant. You must have even gone through physical transformations, I would say, with that one. That was the first thing that came to mind. So you could look completely different next year.
No, and to your point, I did go through, I was not taking care of myself very much, and I gained a lot of weight. And I think a few years ago when I had my Jupiter return, because I also have Jupiter in Scorpio co-present with Pluto, and I had gained a lot of weight, and I transformed the way that I eat. I stopped eating meat and dairy, and I lost like 100 and something pounds. So definitely a lot of transformations. It's the inflation and the expansion and the contraction. It's, just the way it is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Tom, what about you? Are you Plutonic as well, like the rest of us?
Well, it's interesting you say it, because it's funny. I also have an exact square, but it's with Mars to my Pluto. And maybe you guys might be able to help me out a bit, because I'm learning about the traditional 7 planets, and I don't know that much about the outer planets in birth charts. But so I have Pluto in Scorpio in the 6th house. So there's definitely been, I've been quite obsessive about routines, about kind of daily work and trying to find the perfect routine. That has definitely been something that's been a theme for me. But also with it being square Mars, I think there has been something for me in my life about like questioning masculinity, with both within myself and also just in a wider context as well. So yeah, those are some of the themes that I've noticed. But yeah,
and I think the Pluto square Mars as well can really like show us your change maybe in motivations when you made this departure. Well, I know your psychology is your background, but this departure to astrology, it's completely at odds, that some might say, even though they actually blend quite seamlessly. But maybe in the scientific world, we will say it's a
risk. It is a risk. Yeah.
And Pluto will force you. It's like a jumper, or I'll push you. That's what I always. I'm just going to look and see if there are questions, guys. But I think there are mainly comments. I know that Christina made a very valuable comment there about that it was the Pluto and Scorpio generation of women that heralded the Me Too movement, which we need to acknowledge, and as well, somebody mentioned that land and territory was a big during Pluto and Capricorn. I guess we can see that with the invasion, the annexation of Crimea, things like that. And also I just see the theme of privacy could come to the front during Pluto and Aquarius. I think we can all agree with that one. And the dark side of Aquarius is fanaticism. I guess, how would you feel about that? Fanaticism, Aquarius? I always thought, I'm not sure, would I associate Aquarius with fanaticism? More Sagittarius, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think every sign, has shadows, for sure.
It's more about obsession. I would say obsession would be the word with Pluto.
Yeah, Pluto is obsession anyway. Yeah. I just seen this comment. I think whoever is Plutonian cannot be anything else. Yeah, the energy has to be integrated totally. Everyone, it has been my pleasure and honor and privilege to have all three of you here. It went even better than I could have imagined. I just thought the conversation was amazing. I could talk to you, honestly, I could talk to you all night.
Same.
I just can't wait to do another roundtable in the future. And, you know, I hope that at some point in the future, the three of you or two of you or one of you might join me again to discuss another topic. And I can't wait to see what happens when Pluto ingresses into Aquarius. I think you've all given me food for thought and given the viewers food for thought as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Jasmina. Thank you, Andre, and thank you, Tom. And if you're not following Jasmina, Tom, and Andre, I mean, I'm sorry, what are you doing? Pluto's about to move into Aquarius. You need to follow these people. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Astrology is complicated, but if you follow us, it doesn't have to be. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.